It's time for the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in. It is another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, where we are talking District 1 and 2 athletics week in, week out in the great state of Idaho, coming at you live on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account. Also, of course, you can listen to this podcast at IdahoSports.com and wherever you download podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. My name is Brandon Baney. We are joined by our North Idaho expert, Ryan Scaggs. What's up, Scaggs?
Still recovering, man. Still recovering.
Yeah, you had a busy day of basketball broadcasting for IdahoSports.com. You and Garrison Hardy did a great job on the third and final day of the Avista Holiday Tournament, which we will talk about in due time. First, I have to comment on our attire today, Ryan. We are the Blues Brothers.
Yes, we did not plan that, I don't think, but I got the memo late.
Yeah, so Ryan's wearing a blue long-sleeved T-shirt, it looks like. Maybe a turtleneck, I can't tell.
Long-sleeve hoodie things, yeah.
Yeah, hoodie thing, yep. And I'm wearing my UCLA polo. Oh, I got to be honest. It's getting hard to watch those guys play basketball. They lost to Stanford last night. They were like 3 of 18 from the floor in the second half. They just cannot score.
Didn't they lose to Cal Northridge or something like that too?
Yeah, they lost to CSUN. Yes, Cal State Northridge. They're 5-7. You know.
Yeah, that'll get you a high tourney seed.
And they've got a bunch of international players whose names are hard to pronounce, like Ilan Fible, Jan Vide, Berke Bjuktenchel. You know, real fun time.
Fucking UCLA basketball.
Yeah.
College basketball, we could go off on a tangent with that one, but college sports are starting to irritate me. Other than, I mean, we had a great weekend of college football, at least for the semis, but other than that, I'm freaking done with NIL and everything else. People can yell at me, but it's ruined college sports for me. Yeah,
and of course, I don't really watch the big time college football anymore. I still like the FCS, Big Sky Conference.
Yeah, FCS is fun.
My Montana Grizz, they're playing for the Natty on Sunday, Scaggs, against South Dakota State.
Down in Frisco, Texas. That should be a good game too. So, yeah, that'll be a fun one.
I just can't believe that they would schedule the FCS National Championship on a Sunday against the final week of the regular season for the NFL. Like, why not put it on Saturday? There was nothing happening Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the time slot too, and like which games are actually have playoff implications for the NFL. I don't think it's going to score that bad necessarily for rating, but it does. I could see it being irritated, and I don't understand why they didn't put it in the middle of like that dead bowl week, but that's just me. But
I don't know. I remember when it used to be on a Friday night back when I was a kid. But
I thought those semifinal games, honestly, should have been 2 weeks ago, and they should have played the championship in the Rose Bowl on New Year's Day. But what do I know? So.
Yeah, well, of course, Washington beat Texas. Jacob Eck in the comments, horns down always.
There we go. Yeah.
Yep, no doubt. And this is a good transition for us to actually start talking about Idaho sports here on the North Idaho Prepcast. Yeah. Jacob, of course, is one of our many wrestling contributors at IdahoSports.com. Scaggs, biggest weekend, the Rose Bowl of wrestling is this weekend in Idaho, the Rollie Lane Invitational. There are 98 schools signed up to compete this weekend, Scaggs, including several coming from the north.
You know, that's an insane event. I remember kind of when it first kicked off, and it was in its growing phases back in the early 2000s, and to what it's morphed into now is one of the marquee tournaments around the country. I mean, really, you look at the who's who of teams that show up to this event, not just from the Northwest, but I mean, you're bringing in heavy hitters from Utah, California, Nevada regularly. I mean, like they're bringing in big teams, and you know, it's turned into this event that, you know, that's the best tournament held in the Idaho Center, and that's, you know, and I would be knocking the Idaho State tournament. I really think that this tournament, by and large, top to bottom, is tougher than state. And that's saying something. So it's going to be an awesome tournament. And I said off air, like, this thing is the whole bag of hammers, man. Like, you're talking about the heavy hitters from every every team around the region, the West Coast, that's going to be there. And man, it's going to be an awesome event. And best of luck to all the Idaho kids that are competing, because there's some tall orders in front of some kids, but teams like Mountain View, not Mountain, sorry, Meridian and Post Falls. I mean, I think they're gonna have their showings. But there's gonna be teams from the outside. I mean, you're looking at teams like Ording from Western Washington and some of those other schools that show up. It's gonna be a massive contest, and best of luck to those Idaho kids. It's gonna be a fun event to watch.
Yeah, we talked about the Rollie Lane ad nauseum on the Mat Chat Prepcast, which is our standalone wrestling podcast. We do that live every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Pacific time. You can always tune in or listen to the Mat Chat Prepcast wherever you download podcasts. We usually go about an hour every Tuesday night. It's a lot of fun. Teams from the north that are coming down, just looking at the list, this is alphabetical. Coeur d'Alene, of course, is going to come down. Grangeville, Kellogg. You've got Lakeland, Lewiston, Moscow, Post Falls, of course, is going to come down. Sandpoint and Timberlake, all coming down from the north. We also have
Priest River's not making it this year, huh?
No Priest River, no.
Okay, they have a couple of decent kids on that program this year, so
yeah.
But I mean, just shout out to the Spartans. They've been having a few guys showing up and getting some nice finishes this year so far.
Yeah, no doubt. And so then there's going to be teams from Washington, Oregon, Utah, Nevada, and 2 even coming from, I would say the great state, but the state of California. Not great.
We'll avoid politics once again on this Prepcast, at least for the time being.
Okay, so here is the question from Jacob. Rollie Lane, who has more individual champs, Ryan? Ooh. Idaho or every other state, aka
Idaho or the field, huh?
Oh. Yeah, more individual champs.
I just think, by and large, with numbers present, I'll take Idaho, just because of the number of schools that'll be present from the state of Idaho. And then you look at the quality of some of the kids. I mean, like, you got BK is going to be there, Meridian will be there. I mean, you're going to get dudes. So I'll take Idaho. I think it'll be close. I mean, out of the weight classes that are there, I think it'll be a pretty fair split, but Idaho will probably get the slight advantage on overall titles.
Yeah. Team favorite, I think, coming in is Meridian. Post Falls took a little bit of a setback, Ryan. We found out on the show on Tuesday night, Ryder Seguin for Post Falls has an injury and unfortunately will not be competing. So we hope Ryder recovers quickly and gets back out there. So
no, it's that time of year kids start getting dinged up a little bit, and it becomes a battle of attrition. And this tournament's no stranger to that. So it'll be interesting to see. And I think with Ryder being out, obviously Post Falls going to take a hit in the team points just from his finish. That I don't ever say anything's a guarantee, but you could look at him being a top 6 kid for sure. If not being on top of the podium. So losing those team points will hurt the Trojans just a little bit, but I think it's a good experience for somebody else to step into the lineup too and fill that space. So they've got a big tournament of their own coming up too, with the River City Duels coming up in Post Falls as well. So it's a big team event that's going to be taking place at Post Falls High School. So I know that they're going to try to get healthy with also North Idaho Rumble and a few other events up north coming up too.
Yep, it is never a slow season for wrestling, especially up here in the north as well. So, hey, if you're hanging out watching this on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, if you could hit that like button, that'll help everybody find the Prepcast a little easier on replay. And also, if you want to join the conversation, throw something in the comments. We'll throw it up on the screen. I was chuckling when I saw this comment come in, Scaggs. This is from Brandon, so he must be a good guy. Brandon Robinson. I've heard from good people. Hey. I've heard from good people in the know, Court, that Ryan Scaggs will get the vegetarian option wherever he's eating. Big if true. Can you?
I coached with Brandon. He coaches at Jerome. He was one of the guys I coached with at Lakeland back in the day. That's awesome. Coach Rob's checking in.
Can you respond to the allegations that you choose the vegetarian?
Oh, that's 100% false. I'm not a vegetarian in the slightest. So no, I will probably double down on the meat portion. but I don't miss many meals anyways. You can tell if you look at me. So, yeah.
Oh man, that's funny. All right. Well, if Coach Rob or anybody else want to throw in more comments, we will get them up on the screen. But let's transition. Speaking of eating, till we're gonna burst at the seams. Holiday hoops, man. I'm stuffed. I'm full on it. All these holiday tournaments. We're gonna kind of run through them all, and kind of recap what happened. There were so many teams playing all over the state. And so we'll start on the girls' side, Scaggs, and then we'll transition into the boys. And we'll also debut or unveil your first North Idaho Nines of the new year. This is
of the new year. Okay, I was going to say, yeah, first of the new year, second of the season.
Yes, first of 2024. Sure. These are Ryan's personal rankings 1 through 9 of the best girls teams and then the best boys teams, regardless of classification. But before we get there, let's start at the top and work our way down. Class 5A hoops, Scaggs. Lake City goes over to Snohomish, the Glacier Peak High School top of the peak invitational, and they did climb to the top of the peak. They go 3-0. They win the championship. They beat Kings, which is a private school, 58-46. They beat Emerald Ridge 55-40. They beat Nooksack Valley in the championship 55-48. Those are all 3 Washington schools. Very impressive performance from the Lady T-Wolves.
Those are all state qualifying teams too, in their respective classifications. So that's a huge showing for Lake City to go over there and get those wins over pretty strong West Side programs. Just from knowledge that I have in the state of Washington from the past and everything, that's a huge showing. And I know that you look at Zufelt and the other ones that are in the lineup as well, that they're the cast of characters. It's not just a one-man show necessarily with getting great post play. I mean, they're getting contributions from all across that lineup, which has been very impressive to see. We saw them have that one slip up earlier in the year, but since then, I mean, and outside of that, they knocked off the number 1 team in the state to start the year, and they haven't really looked back. That they've been on a roll, and it's going to be an awesome game. They're playing Coeur d'Alene Friday night. That one's going to be a fun one to watch, and it'll be interesting to see how things shake up coming up after that game.
Now, is this the official fight for the fish, or does that come in the second matchup?
I want to say it's the second matchup.
Right. Yeah.
But don't quote me on that one. I know that they both get pretty heated and spirited, pun intended, but yeah.
Yes. Yeah. This is a Lake City team led by a quartet of seniors: Kalia Frazee, Cameron Pickford, Sophia Zufeld, Avery Waddington. You couldn't ask for better pillars of your program. Yeah. And after that, Scaggs, there's 1 junior and 1 sophomore on this year's varsity roster. And then they've got 4 freshmen that are playing up this year. And so, yes, these seniors that are here now, their departures are going to be felt for sure. But these seniors are also kind of mentoring these 4 freshmen that are playing varsity ball. And the hope is that, you just hand the baton down to the next wave of players. But for now, it has been an incredible start to the year for Lake City. I can't say start anymore because we're more than halfway through.
Yeah.
If I personally was ranking teams, I would put Lake City number 1 on the girls' side. Boise was ranked ahead of them in our latest coaches poll, but probably splitting hairs at this point.
Get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. But Lake City continuing to excel. And we'll keep an eye on Coeur d'Alene and Lewiston and Post Falls as well.
Of note with that Lake City group too, with that cast of seniors that you listed, they had to figure it out. Like, they've been playing a lot since they were underclassmen. And so you talk about being able to grow within your program and teach the ones underneath of you. Like, that's a great example of what that group of girls have done. Like, I mean, Pickford and Zufelt and Waddington especially have, shown up every single year and, played their tails off. Some years, having heartbreak in the state play-in game, stuff like that. But that's a team that I look at this year that, it doesn't matter who you are, you don't want to play that team right now. Like, yeah, they're super, super unselfish too.
Yeah, Lake City is 14-1 on the season. Lone setback was to Rocky Mountain, 1 possession game. Hey, Sam Buffington. Sam's in the know up here in North Idaho, Scaggs, and of course, big IdahoSports.com fan and supporter. He says fight for the fish is the first matchup.
Ooh,
so we've got
okay.
Yeah, I double checked on Lake City's website as well. Fight for the Fish coming up.
Fight for the Fish is Friday night. All right.
Oh man,
That's our first rivalry game of the year. Like mostly everybody holds that off towards the end of the season. Like I know Golden Throne is going to be at the end of the year, but yeah, having it that early is kind of interesting coming out. It's during Christmas break still for Coeur d'Alene schools too.
Yeah, that'll be a good time, and of course, packed capacity for the Fight for the Fish. All right, so Lake City 3-0, they win the top of the peak invite. A Vista Holiday Tournament, Scaggs. Let's just go in order of who finished where. We got to start with Grangeville, the Class 2A Bulldogs. They get to the championship matchup. They beat Lewiston in the first round by 2, 54-52. They beat Moscow by 9 in the semis, 54-43. So Grangeville went big game hunting. They took out a 5A school. They took out a 4A school. They get to the championship against Clarkston and kind of run out of steam a little bit. They fall 72-32. But what an impressive showing for Grangeville, taking second at the Avista Holiday Tournament, despite being one of the smallest teams there.
I was impressed. Garrison and I had the call for, their game in the championship, and that Clarkson team, hats off to the Bantams. That team is crazy good. That team is absolutely loaded with talent. They've got 9 players that play the court, and they just absolutely suffocate you. Grangeville ran out of gas. I mean, they just, playing 2 bigger schools in their first 2 games, and they come out in that championship game. We knew it was going to who has the deeper bench. Grangeville, threw some punches early on. They hung tight, and then Clarkson just walked away with it at the end. But Grangeville, hats off. I got a chance to talk to Coach Barger before their game, and she was super impressed with their response. And she said it started with that Sandpoint game at ICC Arena where they took them toe to toe with Sandpoint leading at one point by 19 over the Bulldogs, and Sandpoint came storming back to eventually win that game. But she said that it gave the girls a lift of confidence that she thought that extended beyond beating Cole Valley Christian and beating Melba and the other teams that they've already defeated earlier in the year. That was a huge showing, I think, for Grangeville to get to that championship game. And I know that they would have liked to have won the whole thing, but hats off to a great showing for Coach Barger's crew.
One senior on this year's Grangeville team. It's Maddie Thacker, and she, of course, is a very talented player. Grangeville really is keyed by their guards, right? It's Karis Barger, it's Addison Vanderwall, it's Maddie Thacker. They do have the one post, though,
Green.
right?
Yeah, she's good. She's legit.
Madeline Green at 6'2", and she's a junior center. But
she can hoop. I'm telling you, she was one of the better players in the tournament. She really was.
Yeah, I think for Grangeville, looking down the road, when they get to state, if Green can stay on the floor and not get into foul trouble against taller opponents, I put Grangeville up there with anybody. If Green leaves, it becomes a little dicier because Grangeville has no height outside of Madeline Green.
They don't, but at the same time, they do get pretty sporty on defense. I'll give them that. Yeah. They can scrap, especially, their guard play is pretty good. They get really good point guard play. Especially on the defensive end of the floor. They play really good against transition. It was what they really suffered was that they just got ground to a halt by Clarkson's defense. And that was, they couldn't get into sets. They couldn't get anything flowing down low into Green. Their entries were always denied. Clarkson had size, and that's what gave, Grangeville the fits. But plus it helped when Clarkson has, a possible Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Washington and 2 transfers from Lapway that are really good too. So that doesn't hurt matters much. So
yes, special shout out to Clarkston, of course, coached by Ada Marks, the former coach at Lapway, and both of her daughters, Jordan McCormick Marks and Jalen McCormick Marks, both play for Clarkston as well. So yes, very good, very talented team. Okay, Moscow and Lewiston each went 2-1 at the tournament. They ended up, Moscow ended up taking third. They beat Downey, California by 3, 52-49. Lewiston won the 5th place game. That was the first game of the day. They beat Richland by a bucket, 40-38. Both teams led by first-year head coaches, Josh Colvin at Moscow, Julie Fisher at Lewiston. What did you make of both of these teams?
Moscow's got some players. That's the thing. I mean, they've got a couple really nice pieces within that team. What you saw during the game, though, was the consistency at times would fall apart, and they would commit some silly turnovers. It was, making sure that they're committed on every play. Excuse me. And But they've got size. That's the thing. They've got decent size inside. They've got a couple scrappy guards that'll get after it on the defensive end, but what they struggle is getting buckets on the offensive end of the floor, outside of two players. I mean, really, it was Skinner and another player of theirs that were the offense, Anderson. Other than that, I mean, it was like when they got denied on the offensive end, they struggled and they'd go on long droughts. Lewiston was a team, you can tell that there's promise there. They've got a couple nice pieces. They've got some good guard play. It's going to be finding that consistency again with that group too. They go on cold streaks, and when they go cold, they go ice cold. And so being able to limit those and make sure that they're, getting back. They did a decent job of getting back on defense. It was two teams that knew nothing about each other. You could tell that they had no idea what Richland was going to throw at them, and the other way around. So it was just kind of like, showing up, who's going to show up on their set, run a lot of man early on, and then, hey, we'll figure it out. A few adjustments made. Lewiston came back and took the thing, which was good to see them get it by a bucket. But Richland made it interesting. Lewiston led by double digits at one point in that game, and Richland came storming back. So, and actually both those games at one point were double-digit leads. They ended up both being, close games. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for both those teams, I think that there can be success there. I don't know if there's enough pieces for Moscow to necessarily unseat Sandpoint, but I think if they can build up and get some scoring out of the guard play, they're gonna be okay. Lewiston's got a tall order just because of who's at the top of the league. I don't think that lineup can knock off a Lake City or Coeur d'Alene, but I think if you look to the future and you're hoping to catch those teams on a year that maybe they're without some of their key pieces, that Lewiston team can make it interesting maybe next year or the year after just because of the youth.
Yep, for sure. All right, before we get to Lapway, look at who's in the chat here. Coach Ada Marks from Clarkston. Yeah, Jalen and Jordan McCormick Marks play with Clarkston now.
They were great. They were awesome. We complimented them a ton on the broadcast. You talk about nice contributions for that team, and then you throw it in with Kendall Wallace from Clarkston. That player is unbelievable. She'd be one of the top players in the state of Idaho if she was, 750 feet on the other side of the river from Clarkston and in Lewiston. Like that Clarkston team's crazy good good team. So that was a fun game to watch them play because it was I would have ranked them in the North Idaho 9, but obviously they're a Washington team.
Yeah, we will. Coach Marks, we'll be cheering your girls on from across the border here throughout the rest of the season. But yes, I saw,
give your boss a really hard time for us too, though.
Yeah, right. Shannon Wilson, AD at Clarkston, great guy as well. Okay, Lapway, Coach Marks's former school. They went 1-2 at the Avista tournament. They lost to Downey 51-17. They lost to Richland 62-36. They did rebound to win the 7th place game over Pendleton, Oregon 52-46. I'm really not that concerned about it. If I'm being honest here, Lapway is still really good. They've got a couple of really dynamic players. Skyland Parrish has kind of stepped up with more playing time and has really played well for Lapway this year.
It's the consistency thing that we talked about too. I mean, part of it's also the draw. I mean, you look, that Downey team was kind of Jekyll and Hyde. When they're good, they're crazy good. When they were bad, they were, I mean, I don't want to ever knock a team, but Garrison and I were kind of like, when they're on, they're nailing every shot. They get great penetration, but I didn't get a chance to watch the Lapway Downey game, but that was a team that if they're flashing hot, they're great. So that, I mean, obviously could have been a tough game, but I think Lapway will be fine. I really look at them and, the conference play and what they've got coming up down the stretch and the season. I think they're playing tonight, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll be a fun game, 1A D2, 1A D1 matchup between two really solid programs. But that's going to be a good test for them to see where they're at an equal level because they played some big schools this weekend. Not the result they want, but getting a win over Pendleton in that final was obviously a nice way to cap the weekend instead of going over.
Yep, for sure. So Lapway on the season now is 8-3. You mentioned they're hosting Kendrick tonight, which will be good. And then, I'm kind of looking at the rematch with Prairie. That comes on January 18th. They did beat the Pirates in December by 8, 49-41. We'll see what Coach Lori Mader has in store.
One team to keep an eye on in that's going to be is the Kamiai rematch. That's going to be a game that I would keep an eye on. Kamiai can make things interesting. That team's on a roll right now.
Yeah, and let's see, Lapway beat Cami 58-37 the first time around, and that rematch comes next Tuesday, January 9th. Okay, one more comment here from Ada Marks. She says, Debbie Sabota coaches, not me. I do not coach anymore. I get to be a parent for the first time in 18 years. What does that feel like?
I wasn't going to correct you, but Debbie was on the bench on Saturday. But I will say this, for her saying to be a parent, congrats. That's a ton of fun to be on the parenting side of things and not have to be on the sideline sweating your butt off and yelling at officials. There's some relief in that for sure. I experienced that for the first time, and I don't know if I'll ever go back to coaching because of it. But yeah.
For sure. That's just old habit. Sorry, I misspoke earlier. I think I'm still going to call her Coach Marks. I'm just so used to it, you know?
Yeah. No, she's one of the good ones too. And her kids play so extremely hard. And, hats off to a big win and getting that title on Saturday.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, we talked about Moscow and kind of where they fit in the hierarchy of the 4A IEL. Let's talk about Sandpoint and Lakeland. They both went down to the East Idaho Holiday Shootout in Idaho Falls. Sandpoint got all the way to the championship, Ryan. They beat 5A Madison 49-42. They win by a possession over Class 3A Snake River, but they're the defending 3A state champs, so that no slouch. They win 66-63. They get to the championship, and they just got themselves in a big hole early against Pocatello and could never climb out of it. They fall 66-43. Really the first time this year where Sandpoint kind of takes a ding on the resume, if you will.
But I talked to Sean Kane about that game, and he looked at it and goes, this is going to be a dandy of a ball game. I mean, if Pokey shows up good, they're as good as any team in 4A. And, so Sean, shout out to him for giving me some insider info, but he's like, if they get the bigs going, I don't know if Sandpoint's going to stop them, bench or no bench. And there he is. See, he sure did. So he kind of gave me the down low on that game. And, Pokey exposed them down low inside. That was how Pokey got the big win. And, I know Coach Love, he'll make adjustments and everything else, but they can sure make it pour in from the perimeter. That team could shoot the lights out. They got a big win last night against Lewiston. So I'm not worried about Sandpoint in the slightest. They got to get healthy. That's going to be their biggest problem, is just getting that entire lineup back together and getting their pieces going and ready for postseason play.
Yep. Pocatello has great length, right? Great size. And that on the defensive end, I think that disrupted a little bit of that Sandpoint offense that's usually, such a well-oiled machine, for sure. Lakeland went down and played at the East Idaho Holiday Shootout as well. They went 1-2. They lost to Pocatello, the eventual champs in the opening round, Scaggs. They lost in overtime, 66-56. I was pretty encouraged by that. They turn around and beat Idaho Falls pretty easily, 75-53. They fall by 20 to Teton, which is one of the 3A state title favorites this year, by 20, 61-41. Third game in 3 days, I think, caught up with Lakeland a little bit. But, man, to take Pocatello to the brink and lose in overtime, and then to see what Pocatello did to Sandpoint, how much has Lakeland closed the gap here with Sandpoint?
I think it's worth noting. It really is. And you look at, Lakeland's got good size inside, and that's, if they're going to talk about an Achilles heel with Sandpoint in league play, that may be it right there, is, being able to shut down the inside play. And, so if Lakeland can get things going and get the stars and get them in foul trouble, I think they just got to get Strzok off the floor. If they can get her off the floor in foul trouble, or get, to the other pieces to where you're bringing in the youngsters off the bench that play extremely well, don't get me wrong, but just get the inexperience out there, you're going to set them up to be a little bit more turnover prone. But Lakeland could make things interesting. That's a lineup that is built to play inside. I don't necessarily know about the perimeter, but inside they can definitely take over a ball game.
Yeah, Landry Simon, right? 6 foot junior, phenomenal athlete. They also have 6 foot senior, Kyla Holt, and they've got a pair of freshmen, Scaggs, Lakeland does. 6'1", Macy Bretveld, and 6'3", Mariana Bullington. A pair of freshmen, towers coming in off the bench.
They got some size in that lineup, and so it'll be interesting to see how things turn in the battle for the paddle and all that fun stuff. That'll be an interesting matchup between those two teams.
Lakeland at Sandpoint this Friday night, Friday, January 5th. That'll tell us a lot And then the rematch comes later on in the season. But yeah, I was pretty impressed with Lakeland and how they did down there. Okay, let's go to the 3As. Eagle Holiday Classic hosted by West Valley High School over in Spokane. Bonners Ferry goes 2-0. They beat St. George's 61-40. They beat Newport 53-15. Timberlake goes 1-1. They had the decidedly, tougher schedule, right? They lost to Colfax by 3, 45-42. They win by 6 over Toppenish, 54-48. And with Timberlake, it's kind of like Sandpoint. Just got to get everybody healthy and on the same page.
Yeah, and that loss to Colfax doesn't bother. If I'm coach, I'm not going to look at that. That Colfax team's good. They're historically really good. That's the favorite in 1B, in my opinion, in the state of Washington to win it. So you're losing to a really quality program there. I don't think, and it's crazy the way classifications work between the two states. Like, yeah, you look at Timberlake being a 3A school in Idaho. I mean, the town size and everything's not much difference between them and Colfax. So, school size, and you might have a little bit difference in high school, but Colfax would still end up being probably a 2A school in Idaho, if not, on the small 3A side. But it was I'm not freaking out if I'm Coach Miller. I'm looking at that. I'm like, all right, fine. We just get everybody healthy. We're going to be good. Like, we just got to keep rolling and keep pressing on.
Yeah. Timberlake is 9-3. Their 3 losses have come by a combined 10 points. And 2 of them were 1-possession games. So
two really, really good teams. So,
yeah.
I mean, the Deer Park game, they're really good. Colfax, really good. Sandpoint, really good. So I'm not freaking out. There's no panic button to hit now.
Yep. Okay, wrapping up here. Freeman Holiday Tournament. Kellogg went over and went 1-1. I thought they were playing the Royal JV from Washington. That got flipped on the schedule. They still played a really good JV team. It was the Coeur d'Alene JV, Coeur d'Alene High, and they beat the Coeur d'Alene JV team 57-35. Then they turn around and fall to the hosts from Freeman 63-45. This league, outside of Grangeville, there is a chance for a second team to get to state via a play-in game, Ryan. And I just keep scratching my head at who that team is going to be. Kellogg looks good at times, and then at times, it's like they've taken a step back.
Yeah, and then Priest River, you look at the record and you're like, oh, Priest River is doing what? But then you look at who they play and you're like, oh. So, right. It's like, can they keep momentum by playing some lesser competition early in the year, hoping that translates into some league wins and you surprise some teams with confidence? Realistically, it's going to be Grangeville's league. Grangeville's going to win it. I mean, I don't want to necessarily crown anybody before it's over, but just based off what we've seen so far in the season. But if anybody wants to have a play-in bid and play in an extra game, I would put it down right now. I don't think Orfino's there. I don't think St. Mary's is there. It is realistically going to be Kellogg and Priest River, but Kellogg's already got the head-to-head. So, if Kellogg wants to get consistency down the stretch and get some, rattle off some wins, that, it's there for them. They're just going to have to get consistency out of that lineup.
Yeah, and that's what I'm waiting for is for Kellogg to because I do think ultimately it is Kellogg that'll have the chance to compete. Now, the second place team from District 1 and 2 is going to have to play the third place team from District 3, I believe is how that is working. Let me double check that. Third place team from District 3. That's going to be a tough battle. So, again, I'm just looking for a little more consistency here as the season goes along. Finally, the Colton Christmas tournament for our 1A schools. Ryan, Genesee goes over there. They go 2-0. They beat Colton 48-43. They beat Garpal by 9, 64-55. Potlatch goes 1-1. They fall to Garpal 43-35, and then they beat Asotin 62-35. Genesee is always kind of lurking, right? We talk about Lapway and Prairie and Kamei, but Genesee with Coach Greg Hardy always seems to be right there, just lurking, ready to strike.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how things come up down the stretch. They got a murderous row coming up with, the likes of Lapway, Troy, Kamei down the stretch. So they've got Prairie. They got some tough games in front of them. So we'll know what they're made of, though. I'd say probably in the next couple of weeks, but there's no easy nights in the White Pine League this year. So yeah,
no off nights, and they played well. They're 8-4, they're 2-3 in the league, Ryan, but they lost to Prairie. very early in November. Hey, welcome to your conference opener, second game of the year in November. Here's Prairie in Cottonwood. But they only lost that game by 7, 66 to 59. They lost to Troy by a bucket, 57-55. I don't know. Genesee to me is the team that could, they're down in sixth place right now, but I could see them make the move up.
Well, and here's the thing too, is that you get a district tournament. Like, so you have that whole set up too. So league be darned, kind of at this point, you're just setting up to feel everybody out, and tournament seeding is going to shake out how it shakes out. You're still going to have to beat, the top 3 teams to get into state anyway. So why not try to just put your pieces together to see what works, and hope come tournament time you get hot at the right time. So I wouldn't count them out by any means, but the consistency piece is the name of the game right now in high school basketball, and you got to be able to not have cold streaks and go icy from the field. So Coach Hardy does a good job too. So he's going to have that group ready to go.
Tough part with Genesee is just no height. Tallest players are 5'8", which can make it tough for sure. All right. Well, that's kind of a wrap up of what happened over all the holiday tournament action, Scaggs, which means it's time for your North Idaho 9, the 9 best girls teams in North Idaho, regardless of classification. These are your personal rankings. We will have it scroll across the bottom line as you're watching, but for those that are listening, Ryan's going to take us through them all 1 through 9.
So, I've got Lake City 1. I don't think that's a surprise. Sandpoint, Coeur d'Alene, I got tied at 2, even though Sandpoint has the head-to-head. Coeur d'Alene's on a heater right now, even though they've been battling with some injuries. They're playing really good ball right now. Grangeville at 4. Like I said, I'm not freaking out if I'm them. Same with Timberlake at 5. Both those teams, their season is going to come around to them. They're going to be just fine for postseason play. Kendrick at 6 with Lapway 7. Those two play each other tonight, kind of deciding how that thing shakes out. And then Cami at 8. Cami is a sneaky team to me. That's a team to keep your eye on. I think that they could be dangerous coming up down the stretch. Couple tough early season losses, but they've been playing really well lately. And then Wallace is a team to keep an eye on. I know they took a loss to Lakeside, but Coach Farkas does a good job with that group, and I think that they're going to be, poised to make another run for a state tournament appearance. So that's what I've got for my girls top 9.
I'm glad you finally gave Wallace a little love there. I think they're a pretty good team. They've got a trio of sisters, the Phillips sisters. One isn't playing right now because of injury, but not many teams in high school can say they've got 3 sisters in 3 different classes. It's not like, oh, here's twins and a girl, or it's triplets.
Irish twins, and
right. Yeah. So way to go, Wallace. Keep up the good work. Okay. Let's shift over to boys basketball now, and we'll kind of do the same thing, run through all the holiday tournament action, and then give you your North Idaho 9. Let's start with Lake City and Coeur d'Alene, the 2 big 5A schools. They go over to Central Valley, over in the Spokane Valley, and played a little 4-team round-robin holiday tournament there. Lake City goes 2-0. They beat Meade 71-42. They beat Central Valley 91-78. Coeur d'Alene, I think a little surprisingly, goes 1-1. They beat Central Valley 74-53. Then they turn around and lose to Meade in a head scratcher 65-60.
Yeah, and that one, you want to say those are a flush it game. That's a flush it game for Coeur d'Alene, one that they just kind of want to get rid of. But yeah, I think we might have learned more about Lake City than we learned about Coeur d'Alene in that little round robin. Lake City's got a good little team. They're young, but they got a good group of talent that's coming through, and they got some youngsters that are going to be really, really good. So, you just kind of got to be patient and wait for the stars to align with that group. I think they're going to be a team that I look at. IEL is crazy this year. The 5A IEL. All those teams are just log jammed at the top right now, all within like a game and a half of each other. So, because Lewiston's going to throw a wrench in the mix now and make things interesting, it looks like, with what they're able to put together offensively and defensively. Their defense is crazy good. But yeah, Coeur d'Alene and Lake City. Coeur d'Alene's just going to get, guard play. We know what they've got with, Logan Orchard and Caden Simmons. And there's dudes in that lineup that can go off for 20 on any given night. They just, we got to make sure that there's, the basketball can make its way around the floor. And, with that group of guys, and if they play unselfishly, they're a really tough team to beat. They're a very tough team to beat. So I'm not freaking out about that Meade loss, but at the same time, you kind of got to look at it, and it's like there's something to learn from that. They're going to move forward. I think they're going to be okay. They're still the top team in my mind in North Idaho right now, but the fight for the fish can make things interesting. That game gets pretty appealing tomorrow night.
Yeah, boy, that is going to be some battle.
Those two games are freaking crazy. Like, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was going to say the girls fight for the fish and the boys, it's actually next Friday, January 12th. Okay. I didn't want to direct people.
I was assuming they were playing a doubleheader, but that's okay.
No, they are. They are. It's not this upcoming Friday. It's the 12th. So gotcha. I don't want people going, banging on the doors on tomorrow night.
Okay. Like, no, that's new. That's weird to me because you would think that the one event's tied to both games instead of splitting it up. So that's where you lose me. So okay.
No. There is. It's a doubleheader, but it's on the 12th.
I thought they were playing Friday.
No, 12th.
Okay, I thought the game was tomorrow night.
Yeah. No, it is a double header on the 12th.
All right, we're in. Okay, next week we're good.
Oh boy, hey, man, math is hard,
man. This Christmas break, I didn't even know what day it was yesterday.
That's all right. I said Ada Marks was still coaching Clarkston. That was wrong. I mean,
she never even coached them to begin with.
This is, you know what? We're like the Coeur d'Alene boys. This is going to be a flush it Prepcast. We're gonna just. I will say, I think Coeur d'Alene was pretty motivated their next time out after falling to Meade. They came back home last Saturday, played Moses Lake, 93-40, the final. They got the win.
Not a 50 burger. I mean, you're good.
I think they're properly aligned once again. So, all right. A Vista tournament, Scaggs. Lewiston, you're a Vista tournament champs. They beat Kendrick 61-42. They beat Moscow 69-36. They beat Rocky Mountain, a fellow 5A school, in the finals 55-39. What do we make of this Bengals team? I really like their coach, Brooks Malm. He's come in and really gotten this group of athletes to become basketball players.
He's fiery, and he gets his guys to match that, and they start on defense. He's kind of given that mantra is like, we're gonna make basketball life just suck. We're like, welcome to 32 minutes of just like hating life, and that's how they kind of operate. They just suffocate you on defense. They got two really nice pieces down low with Drew Hottinger and Gomez, that like those two nice little 1-2 punch there for that lineup. They got really good guard play. Like our IdahoSports.com player of the game was their point guard. It wasn't Drew Hottinger. It wasn't Gomez. I was super impressed with what they were able to get out of their guards. And so that lineup, if they can be consistent on that side of the ball, they're gonna be great. But they can make things interesting. I think that they're gonna get fits because of size down low too. I think they can make things painful for Coeur d'Alene and Lake City. It's gonna be an interesting league. It really is. The league schedule is gonna be a fun night in, night out, just brawl. That's kind of how Brooks Malm wants those games to be. It's like, all right, we're going to turn it into a bar fight. That's what it's going to be for 32 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. So you were talking about the 50 burger that Coeur d'Alene hung on Moses Lake. Scott Burton, our Magic Valley Prepcast host, says, got a problem with 50 burgers? And I will refer you to the previous comment from Coach Rob. Ryan Scaggs will always get the vegetarian option. So yes.
No, I do not have a problem with 50 burgers. I remember the days in high school where there was what was it, the 29-cent McDonald's cheeseburger or hamburgers or whatever, 39-cent cheeseburgers. That says how old I am. But yeah, I remember those days. You go $20 and a friend and you'd knock yourself out, literally.
I think we got our title here, 39-cent cheeseburgers. It's gonna
Cheeseburger ready.
It's going to be a good podcast title for sure. Okay. And let's talk now about Lapwai. Lapwai at the Avista tournament, right? They took third place. They go 2-1. They beat a really good Downey, California team, 66-62 in the opening round. And that was legit. Downey's girls, we didn't mention this when we were talking about the girls Vista tournament, but the Downey girls coach is originally from North Idaho, Skaggs. I think that was the connection of how Downey came up.
I was trying to figure out the connection there, because I'm like, what is this team doing here? Like, we're going through the lineup, and I'm like, LA? What? Like, how do you end up in Lewiston? So okay.
I think the Downey girls coach is formerly from, I'm going to say the wrong town, Kendrick, maybe. I can't remember, but there was some connection with the girls team. And so the Downey boys came up as well. Lapwai beat them 66-62. They fall to Rocky Mountain in the semis, 82-73, which, okay, yeah, it's a 5A school. No shame there. Coached by a former Lapwai standout, right? Ivory Williams. But you were talking about, it's just one of those nights where Rocky couldn't miss, and probably on most nights, Lapwai finds a way to win that game.
I think, and it's not close. Like, I think that's just one of those anomaly games where you look at it and like, okay, we're going to play these two teams, and Lapwai would win. If they played 40 times, Lapwai wins 30. That was one of the 10 wins that Rocky Mountain gets. Like, they literally couldn't miss. Like, they shot the flipping lights out. And it wasn't like Lapwai did anything wrong, because Case Wynot went off for like 49 points. So, like, it was an absolute shootout. And, they came out and drew the short straw on that one. I look at Lapwai as a team. They were the best team in the tournament. If you look at like pieces, I thought that they blew the doors off of Moscow in that game. And Moscow's got a nice lineup. They got some good pieces there. But Lapwai, I was impressed. Like, with missing Terrell Ellenwood Jones, I'm like, what's this Lapwai team going to be like this year? They're going to be okay. I think that they're going to be all right. Case is so unselfish. That's the one thing. If you look at the maturation within his game, is that he's taken it to another level with his on-court vision is insane. I haven't seen a high school kid able to pass like that before.
He gets the rebound, and the first thing he does is looks down court to see if he can snap a full court pass down the floor every single time. And so, yes, those that are looking at just the points totals, and we're going to talk about Case Wynot's chase for the all-time record, of course, coming up, but you're missing the bigger picture, and it is that he plays within the team for sure. It's been really fun to watch. So Lapwai Lapwai beat Moscow in that third place game, 72-51. So let's talk about it. Case Wynot. I just compiled the new totals this morning, right before we came on. Skaggs. Case is now third on the all-time Idaho points list. Your leader still is Jeff Mercer from Kamei, 2,536 career points from 1990 to 93. And this is from IdahoHoops.com. This is where I got this info. Spencer Lynn from Wilder, still in second place, 2,846 points. That was from 1996 to 99. But Case is now third on the all-time list with 2,378 points. So Case is 108 points away from second, 158 points from tying the all-time record. And we're going to be working on a story for that on IdahoSports.com.
We'll have to do some scoreboard chasing, because maybe we end up being there for the state record game. That would be pretty cool.
Talking to some people, it did sound like they're thinking, there's a stretch of 5 games coming up here, and maybe towards the tail end of that 5-game stretch. But absolutely, I think we got to be there to cover that for IdahoSports.com. So yes, stay tuned, Skaggs. You and me might be making a road trip to Lapwai if you're cool.
Sounds good. Stop by for some pizza in Clarkson.
There we go. Yeah.
And I won't order the vegetarian option.
It'll be a good time.
Non-vegan pizza.
Right. So Kendrick, took their lumps at the Avista tournament. They went 1-2. They lost to Lewiston, 1A D2 versus a 5A in the opening round, 61-42. They lose to Pendleton, Oregon by 6, 40-34, but they rebound. Ryan, it would be easy to pack it in on a Saturday morning and say, yeah, you know what, we did our best, especially against a team like Downey, California, who Lapwai only beat 4 points, but Kendrick finds a way and they win 45-40. What an impressive win for Coach Silflos.
And even if, Downey ended up losing their best player in the tournament, he got hurt. And so he wasn't playing in the Kendrick game. But that Downey team still got some nice pieces too. And that's a big win for Coach Silflos' team. I mean, moving on, and I know that they took a lump last night losing to Potlatch, but that's still a team that they're going to be the favorite in my mind for 1A D2 state champs. And hats off also to Ty Cap. He's got 1,000 career points now. So he accomplished that as well. So that's a Kendrick team. You want to schedule tough games. You want to, because you want to see what you're made of. And that's what you're going to get. And I don't think, records be darned. You get to the state tournament, your record doesn't matter anymore. So if you've been challenged and you've learned a lot from those games, that's what really matters. And Coach Silflo did a great job with getting them into that tournament. And it's going to pay dividends, I think, down the stretch for this team.
Yep, for sure. Okay, let's talk 4A Inland Empire League. Lewiston, Moscow, Sandpoint, or not Lewiston, Moscow, Sandpoint, Lakeland.
That's next year, not this year.
That is next year. All three schools went to 3 different tournaments. So Moscow went 1-2 at the Avista tournament. They beat Pendleton 55-50. They fell to Lewiston and Lapway by double digits. Sandpoint went to Vancouver, Washington. Fort Vancouver High School hosted the Myron Lawrence Memorial Tournament. Sandpoint went 1-2 there against all Washington opponents. They lost by 10 to Juanita. They won by 10 over Heritage, and then they lost by 2 to Eagle Point in their finale. And then Lakeland went over to Idaho Falls for the East Idaho Holiday Shootout. Lakeland won their opener over Skyline in overtime, 77-74. They then lost by double digits to Snake River, and they lost by 9 to Bonneville to wrap up the tournament there. Are we any clearer on what's going to happen in this IEL based upon these tournament results, or is it still anybody can win this thing?
If I look at lineups and just based on who's on the court, I think Moscow's got the best lineup. I just don't know what's going on that they can't complete and close out a game. But like you look at the pieces there, like with Cummings and Hillman, that's 2 really good players that the Bears have. I still can't figure out the IEL 4A, and I don't think we ever will until we see who hoists the district trophy and see him on the seed line in the state tournament. Like, I don't think we're going to really know until then.
Yeah, well, the first domino is about to fall. It'll happen on January 5th, this Friday, Lakeland at Sandpoint. We talked about what a great girls matchup that's going to be. We'll find out a lot on the boys' side there as well. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens in this crazy league. Okay, let's talk about 3A basketball. Bonners Ferry and Timberlake went over to the Eagle Holiday Classic in Spokane at West Valley High School. Bonners Ferry goes 1-1. They lost to the hosts from West Valley by a single point, 62-61. They turn around and they beat Pullman in overtime, 70-64. I thought this was a nice weekend for the Badgers.
No, 1-1. There's nothing wrong with that. And 2 pretty good teams, too, that they played in their own right. So being able to take the Hounds to OT and get the victory, that's a big one there. And then, 1 point loss to West Valley, a host team in a Christmas tournament, that's a wash. Like, in my mind, I think that Bonners Ferry is still who we thought they were at the beginning of the year. They're still a good team. They're still my favorite to win the 3A district championship, get their way to state. They'll be a third day team. They'll be playing for a trophy. I don't know if they're going to be in the title game or not again this year, but they'll certainly be playing for some hardware. There's some really nice pieces in that team, and they'll be just fine. They'll be good. And then I was impressed actually with Timberlake. They're showing. I thought that they battled pretty hard against that Greyhound team, taking them to OT. Not to steal your thunder and what you're going to talk about with their result.
No, you're good.
But
yeah.
And then making their way, and then that's just how the chips fall. I mean, you do it with the draw with what you can, and Timberlake fought and battled. So it should be an interesting. I think Timberlake's just a scrappy team. They're going to make it tough for whoever they play any given night.
Yeah, Timberlake went 0-2. They lost in overtime to Pullman. So Bonners Ferry beats Pullman in overtime. Timberlake loses to Pullman in overtime, 84-71. They also lost by 40 to Rogers High School in Washington. I know Rogers' girls team is not great, but what about their boys team?
Their boys team's legit. They got a kid that's playing football at University of Idaho that's on that boys team. They're legit. They're not bad.
Okay. I will tell you, Scaggs, just kind of looking statewide at what's going on. I think Class 3A is going to be the most wide open state tournament this year on the boys' side with Bonners Ferry. Teton is very good. They've got a lot of talented athletes. Kimberly won the title 2 years ago. McCall Donnelly has been in the championship game pretty recently. Snake River has a couple of dynamic guys, but there are like literally 5 or 6 teams that I could point at and go, yeah,
they're pretty good.
That team could win state. Sure. So Bonners Ferry is going to be right there, I think, for sure.
Yeah. Bonners Ferry will be in the mix. I think just, Asher Williams is one of the most dynamic players in North Idaho, if not the entire state. So you look at what they're able to do. If they can maximize the pieces around him and continue to get good, solid contribution around him and protect him and keep him out of foul trouble, they're going to be they can challenge again. They really can. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but they're a good team. Like, they're a complete team. They're just like 3A, like you said, is wide open. I don't know. It's just, you can have a hiccup, but you don't want to have it at state. That's for sure. So I know that's a long ways away from now. And, coach would probably be like, shut up, Ryan, stop talking about state. We got to worry about Timberlake twice and finishing out their regular season schedule. But if you look at that, I mean, you kind of start scoreboard watching around the state. They're with anybody else. I mean, I would put them in the top favorite for the 4A right now in the IEL. Like, I really look at that team. They would be the best 4A team. So,
hey, that's no joke. In the 4A IEL, for sure. Bonners Ferry has played. They will play Sandpoint next Wednesday, January 10th. And they haven't played any of the other 4As, but they've played the 2 5As from Coeur d'Alene, and they lost to Coeur d'Alene by 12, and then they lost to Lake City by only 4. So I think Bonners Ferry could go win the 4A IEL, definitely. For sure. Okay, let's wrap up here. Freeman Holiday Tournament. Kellogg and Logos went over. They each lost in their opener. Logos lost to Freeman 88-25. Kellogg lost to Shadle Park 58-33. And then Logos and Kellogg played each other, and Logos got the win 58-49. Kind of like in football, I think people are sleeping on Logos a little bit, and this is a team that's really good.
Yeah, Garrison and I talked about it on Saturday a little bit during the breaks on one of our games of just sneaky teams around. And I know he coaches at Logos, and he's like, I don't want to sound like a homer, but, everybody talks a lot about Lapway and Potlatch, but he's like, don't be surprised if we start to throw our hat in the ring, Logos being that team and making things interesting, because they got a lot of the same pieces. The kids that were in the football team, they play basketball too, and they can make some noise. So they got some athletes. They'll make it interesting. I really do like, but the Potlatch team right now is, in my mind, that Potlatch Lapway matchup is real nice. But
I mean, the Lapway I think is my favorite, and that race for the other spot is going to be fascinating. Just look at Logos this year. They lost to Potlatch in overtime, 62-58. They beat Kamei by only 5, 50-45, and Kamei still has David Clute. And they only beat Troy by 9, 49-40, with first-year coach Mitchell Sandquist leading the Trojans there. So I think this race for second, Logos, Troy, Kamei, Potlatch, all of them are in the mix.
That district tournament's going to be fun. It really is. I think there's going to be some great games in that district tournament. I think for boys and girls, that league is just so evenly loaded that, yeah, there's going to be a couple upsets too. We'll see a couple big upsets this year.
Yep. And speaking of the White Pine League, Genesee and Deary both went 1-1 at the Colton Christmas tournament. Each of them beat Colton, and each of them lost to Garpal. Both pretty close. Genesee lost to Garpal by 7, and Deary lost by 6. So 2 pretty decent teams there as well. All right, Scaggs, let's wrap up with your North Idaho 9 in boys basketball, and then see if we can get out of here in under an hour. We're at 58:30, so go quickly.
It's like a minute and a half.
Here's your North Idaho 9 for boys.
So I got number 1, Coeur d'Alene. We talked about them earlier. Lakeside at number 2 still. That's a team that we'll learn more about them as the year goes on, but that's a really, really, really good unit. Lewiston I took all the way up to 3 with their Vista tournament win. I'm still – they're like 3 and sit through 6 can all be interchanged. So Lewiston, Lapway at 4, 5 Post Falls, 6 Lake City. Lapway I think has got the most dynamic piece there. 7 Bonners Ferry. So yeah, 3 through 7 I would say is probably on the same level. And then 8 Potlatch. That's a team that can make a lot of noise. I could see them playing at state in the Final Four. I really could. And then Kendrick at 9 to wrap out my boys North Idaho 9. under an hour.
All right. Yeah, we have 30 seconds left, Scaggs. So let me tell you, next week we'll be back at it for another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast. The shows won't be as long, I promise. We took last week off because of the holidays, so we had to have 2 weeks worth of content in one show. We'll just hit the biggest stories moving forward through the rest of the winter season. Ryan Scaggs, as always, thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
All right. And I'm Brandon Baney. We'll see you next time on the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.